Elena Martinez stood in the marble lobby of Sterling Industries, her heart pounding against her ribs. The towering glass building seemed to stretch endlessly into the Seattle sky, making her feel small and insignificant. She clutched her worn leather portfolio tighter, the one her grandmother had given her years ago when she first started college. The receptionist, a polished woman with perfect makeup, barely looked up from her computer screen. "Name?" she asked in a bored tone. "Elena Martinez. I have an appointment with Mr. Sterling at 2 o'clock. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly as she typed. "Oh yes, the graphic designer. Take the elevator to the 35th floor. His assistant will meet you there." Elena thanked her and walked toward the gleaming elevator doors. As she waited, she caught her reflection in the polished metal. Her simple black dress and modest heels looked professional enough, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone could see through her carefully constructed appearance to the struggling artist beneath. The elevator climbed smoothly, and Elena tried to calm her nerves. This contract could change everything for her. Sterling Industries was one of the biggest tech companies on the West Coast, and landing their rebranding project would mean financial security for the first time in years. More importantly, it would prove to herself and everyone else that she belonged in this world. The doors opened to reveal a sleek hallway lined with abstract art. A woman in her 50s approached with a warm smile. "Ms. Martinez? I'm Patricia, Mr. Sterling's assistant. He's running a few minutes late, but please, come this way." Elena followed Patricia through a maze of glass offices where employees in expensive suits typed furiously at their computers. Everything here screamed money and success, from the designer furniture to the fresh flowers arranged perfectly on every surface. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" Patricia asked as they reached a comfortable waiting area. "Water would be great, thank you." As Patricia disappeared, Elena settled into a leather chair that probably cost more than her rent. She opened her portfolio and reviewed her presentation one last time. The designs were good, she knew that. They were fresh, innovative, exactly what a forward-thinking company like Sterling Industries needed. "Ms. Martinez?" Elena looked up to see a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit approaching. This had to be James Sterling himself. She had seen his picture in business magazines, but, in person, he was even more striking. Dark hair with silver at the temples, sharp blue eyes, and a presence that commanded attention. He was probably in his early 40s, successful beyond most people's wildest dreams. She stood and extended her hand. "Mr. Sterling, thank you so much for this opportunity." His handshake was firm, professional. "Please, call me James. Come into my office." Elena followed him into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, but she forced herself to focus on the business at hand. "So," James said, settling behind his massive desk, "tell me why Sterling Industries should trust you with our complete rebrand." Elena had practiced this moment 100 times. She opened her portfolio and began her presentation, explaining her vision for the company's new look, how it would appeal to younger demographics while maintaining the trust of established clients. James listened intently, occasionally asking pointed questions that showed he understood design better than most executives. "These are impressive," he said, studying her mock-ups. "Very different from what our current agency has been producing." "Different can be good," Elena replied. "Your company is evolving, growing. Your visual identity should evolve too." James leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. "You're quite young for such a big project. What makes you think you can handle the pressure?" Elena had faced this question before. "I may be young, Mr. Sterling, but I'm not inexperienced. I've worked with startups that became major players, helped established businesses reinvent themselves. Age isn't what matters, it's vision and dedication." "Fair enough." He closed her portfolio and stood. "I need to think about this. There are other agencies we're considering, firms with longer track records." Elena's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. "Of course, I understand this is a major decision. Patricia will be in touch within the week," James said, walking her toward the door. As they shook hands goodbye, Elena caught a glimpse of something in his eyes, an interest that went beyond business. But she dismissed the thought immediately. Men like James Sterling didn't notice women like her, not romantically anyway. The elevator ride down felt much longer than the trip up. Elena replayed every moment of the meeting, wondering if she had said something wrong, if her inexperience had shown despite her best efforts to appear confident. 3 days later, Patricia called with news that changed everything. Sterling Industries wanted to hire her, but with one condition. James would be personally overseeing the project, which meant working closely with him over the next several months. Elena should have been thrilled, and part of her was. But another part felt a flutter of nervous anticipation that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with the way James had looked at her during that handshake goodbye. Their first official meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Elena arrived 15 minutes early, determined to prove she deserved this opportunity. James greeted her himself this time, leading her to a smaller conference room where they could spread out her designs and work more intimately. "I've been thinking about your concepts all weekend," he said, rolling up his sleeves. Elena tried not to notice how the simple gesture made him seem more approachable, more human. They spent the morning discussing
You can't
color
just walk away
schemes
from this.
and
I have to think about the baby
their
now.
heads bent
This is
close
not just
together
about
over
you
the
anymore.
conference table. Elena was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him when the conversation focused on work. He had good instincts, understood the psychology of visual communication better than most of her clients. "What about lunch?" James asked when Elena's stomach growled audibly around noon. "There's a good place downstairs." "Oh, I don't want to take up your time. I can grab something quick and come back." "Nonsense. We're making good progress. Besides, I'm hungry too." The restaurant was elegant, but not stuffy, with large windows overlooking the harbor. Elena felt underdressed in her simple blouse and skirt, but James seemed completely at ease, asking her about her background, how she had gotten into design. "My grandmother was an artist," Elena found herself saying. "Not professionally, but she painted the most beautiful landscapes. She always said art was about seeing the world differently, showing people things they hadn't noticed before. She sounds wise. She was. She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 10. Elena didn't know why she was sharing such personal information, but something about James invited confidences. Maybe it was the way he listened, giving her his complete attention without judgment. "That must have been difficult," he said quietly. "It was, but Grandma Elena made sure I knew I could become anything I wanted to be. She worked 2 jobs to pay for my art classes, never complained when I chose design school over something more practical." "Elena," James repeated thoughtfully. "You're named after her." "Yes. She passed away right before I graduated. I wish she could have seen me start my own business. I think she would be proud." Their eyes met across the table, and Elena felt that flutter again, stronger this time. She looked away first, reminding herself this was a business relationship. James Sterling was her client, nothing more. But over the following weeks, the lines began to blur. Their meetings stretched longer than necessary. Conversations drifted from work to personal topics. James started bringing her coffee in the mornings, remembering exactly how she liked it. Elena found herself looking forward to their sessions with an anticipation that had nothing to do with the project. One evening, they were working late on final presentation materials when James suggested ordering dinner to the office. "You don't have to stay," Elena said. "I can finish this tomorrow." "I want to stay, unless you have somewhere else to be." Elena shook her head. She rarely had anywhere else to be these days. Her social life had taken a back seat to building her business, and most of her college friends had moved away or gotten too busy with their own careers. They ordered Chinese food and spread it out on the conference table between design mock-ups and color swatches. The building was quiet around them, most employees having left hours ago. "Tell me something," James said, using chopsticks with surprising skill. "What do you do when you're not working?" "Besides work, I mean." Elena laughed. "What's besides work? I'm either designing or looking for new clients or trying to keep up with my bookkeeping." "That's not healthy," says the man who's still at the office at 9 p.m. "Touché." James smiled, and Elena noticed how it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, less intimidating. "But I have an excuse. Divorced workaholic, remember?" Elena had heard rumors about his divorce, whispers in the elevator, and break room conversations. Victoria Sterling, his ex-wife, was Seattle society royalty, the kind of woman who appeared in the social pages wearing designer gowns to charity galas. "How long were you married?" she asked before she could stop herself. 8 years. We divorced 2 years ago. James's expression darkened slightly. Victoria, and I wanted different things. She wanted the social scene, the appearances. I wanted a family. No children. No. Victoria wasn't interested in having kids. She said it would interfere with her lifestyle. There was pain in his voice, carefully controlled, but still visible to someone who was paying attention. Elena felt a pang of sympathy. I'm sorry. That must have been hard. It was what it was. We weren't compatible in the ways that mattered. They finished dinner in comfortable silence, working side by side as the city lights twinkled beyond the windows. When Elena finally packed up her materials around 11, James insisted on walking her to her car. The parking garage was dimly lit and echoing. Elena's modest Honda looked even more humble next to James's sleek BMW, but he didn't seem to notice the difference. Drive safely, he said. And for a moment, Elena thought he might say something else, something that would change the careful professional distance they had maintained. Instead, he stepped back and waited until she had started her car and driven away. The project was nearing completion when everything changed. Elena had been feeling tired lately, attributing it to the long hours and stress of such an important client. But when she couldn't keep down her morning coffee for 3 days in a row, she finally admitted something might be wrong. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. Elena stared at it in her tiny apartment bathroom, her mind reeling. This wasn't possible. She had been careful, always used protection. Except for that one night 3 weeks ago when she and James had worked until midnight on final revisions, when he had offered to drive her home because her car was in the shop. They had stopped at his place first so he could pick up some documents, and somehow one drink had turned into a long conversation on his couch, which had turned into a kiss that seemed to surprise them both, which had turned into the kind of passionate encounter that Elena had only read about in novels. The next morning, they had both agreed it was a mistake, that it couldn't happen again if they wanted to maintain their professional relationship. Elena had thrown herself into finishing the project, and James had been carefully polite and distant ever since. Now she was pregnant with his baby, and she had no idea how to tell him. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The final presentation was scheduled for Friday, with Sterling Industries' board of directors and senior management team in attendance. Elena had spent weeks preparing, making sure every detail was perfect. She arrived early to set up, her stomach churning with more than just morning sickness. James was already there, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit, reviewing her materials one last time. Everything looks good, he said without meeting her eyes. The board should be impressed. James, I need to talk to you about something. After the presentation, I mean. He finally looked at her, something flickering in his expression. What about? Before Elena could answer, board members began filing into the conference room. She had to push her personal crisis aside and focus on the most important presentation of her career. The next hour passed in a blur of slides and explanations, questions, and approvals. The board loved her designs, authorizing James to move forward immediately with implementation. Elena should have been thrilled, but all she could think about was the conversation waiting for her after everyone left. Finally, it was just the two of them in the empty conference room. Congratulations, James said, beginning to collect the presentation materials. You should be proud. They were very impressed. James, please sit down. I have something important to tell you. He must have heard something in her voice because he stopped what he was doing and looked at her directly for the first time in weeks. I'm pregnant, Elena said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. James went very still, his face becoming an unreadable mask. I see, he said finally. And you're telling me because? Elena felt like he had slapped her. Because you're the father. James's laugh was cold, bitter. Of course I am. How convenient. Convenient. Elena stared at him, not understanding his reaction. Let me guess. The struggling artist discovers she's pregnant right after landing the biggest contract of her career. With the CEO, no less. Very convenient timing. What are you saying? James stood abruptly, pacing to the window. I'm saying I've been down this road before, Elena. Victoria tried the same thing when she thought our marriage was falling apart. A mysterious pregnancy that would conveniently solve all her financial problems. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. You think I'm lying? I think you're a very ambitious woman who sees an opportunity. You bastard. The words escaped before Elena could stop them. You think I planned this? That I somehow orchestrated getting pregnant to trap you? Didn't you? James turned back to face her, his blue eyes cold as winter. You're smart, Elena. Smart enough to know that a baby would mean 18 years of financial support from a very wealthy man. Elena stood on shaking legs, grabbing her portfolio with trembling hands. You're right about one thing. I am smart. Smart enough to know when someone is showing me exactly who they really are. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't want anything from you. Not money, not support, nothing. My baby, and I will be just fine without you. Elena, wait. But she was already gone, the conference room door closing behind her with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Elena spent the weekend in her apartment, crying and trying to figure out what to do next. The payment from Sterling Industries would keep her afloat for a few months, but having a baby would change everything. She would need steady income, health insurance, a bigger place to live. Monday morning brought a knock on her door. Elena opened it to find Patricia standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable. Ms. Martinez? Mr. Sterling asked me to bring you this. She handed Elena an envelope and a small gift bag. He wanted to make sure you received it personally. After Patricia left, Elena opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a brief note in James's handwriting. For expenses. This should be sufficient until other arrangements can be made. Elena stared at the check, her anger building with each passing second. He was paying her off, treating her like some kind of prostitute who needed to be compensated for services rendered. She tore the check into pieces and threw it in the trash. Then, she looked in the gift bag and found a business card for one of Seattle's most exclusive law firms, along with another note. They specialize in discreet arrangements. Patricia can schedule an appointment. Elena had never felt so humiliated in her life. James Sterling had made his position crystal clear. He thought she was a gold digger, and he was willing to pay her to go away quietly. Fine. If that's what he wanted, that's exactly what she would give him. Elena Martinez had survived losing her parents, being raised by a grandmother who worked herself to exhaustion, putting herself through college on scholarships and part-time jobs. She could certainly survive this. But, as she sat in her empty apartment, one hand unconsciously moving to 2 years had passed since Elena Martinez walked out of Sterling Industries, and her life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. The small coastal town of Mendocino, California, had become her sanctuary, a place where nobody knew about her past with James Sterling or cared about her modest circumstances. Elena sat in the morning sunshine streaming through the windows of her art studio, a converted garage behind the cottage she rented from Mrs. Chun, an elderly widow who had become like a grandmother to both Elena and her daughter. Sophia was playing quietly nearby, building elaborate towers with wooden blocks while chattering to herself in the way that only 2-year-olds could manage. Mama, look. Sophia held up a block shaped like a star, her dark hair catching the light. She had inherited James's blue eyes, though Elena tried not to think about that resemblance too often. Very pretty, sweetheart, Elena said, looking up from the children's book illustration she was working on. The freelance work wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed her to stay home with Sophia. A knock on the studio door interrupted her concentration. Mrs. Chen appeared, carrying a steaming cup of tea and wearing the worried expression that had become increasingly familiar over the past few months. Elena, dear, you have a visitor. Elena frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors were rare in their quiet corner of Mendocino. Who is it? A man in an expensive suit. He says he's from Seattle, looking for you specifically. Elena's blood turned to ice. There was only one person from Seattle who might track her down, and she had hoped never to see James Sterling again. But why would he come here? What could he possibly want after all this time? Did he give you a name? Mr. Davidson, I think he said. He's waiting by the front gate. Relief flooded through Elena. Not James, then. But who was Mr. Davidson? And how had he found her? Can you watch Sophia for a few minutes? Of course, dear. Elena walked through the cottage and out to the white picket fence that surrounded Mrs. Chen's property. A tall, thin man in his 60s stood beside a black sedan, holding a briefcase. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his suit probably cost more than Elena's rent. Ms. Martinez? He approached with a professional smile. I'm Robert Davidson, attorney for Sterling Industries. I wonder if we might have a word. Elena's heart began to race. About what? Perhaps we could speak privately? I have some important information regarding Mr. Sterling. Despite her better judgment, Elena found herself curious. She led Mr. Davidson to a small cafe downtown, leaving Sophia safely with Mrs. Chun. They settled at a corner table where Elena could see the ocean through salt-stained windows. Coffee? Elena asked, though her own hands were shaking too much to hold a cup steady. Thank you, no. Ms. Martinez, I'm afraid I have some difficult news to share. Elena waited, her stomach churning with possibilities. James Sterling was killed in a car accident 3 weeks ago. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She stared at Mr. Davidson, unable to process what he had just said. Killed? I'm very sorry. He was driving home late one evening when another driver ran a red light. He died instantly. Elena gripped the edge of the table, her vision blurring. James was dead. The man who had broken her heart, who had accused her of the worst kind of betrayal, who was Sophia's father whether he had believed it or not, was gone. I don't understand why you're telling me this, she managed to say. Mr. Davidson opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick envelope. Because you're mentioned in his will. Elena stared at the envelope as if it might bite her. That's impossible. James thought I was a liar and a fraud. He wouldn't have left me anything. According to his instructions, this letter is to be opened only by you, and only after his death. He wrote it himself, sealed it personally. With trembling hands, Elena took the envelope. Her name was written on the front in James's familiar handwriting. Inside, she found several pages of his careful script. Dear Elena, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and it is too late for me to say the things I should have said 2 years ago. Elena's vision blurred with tears, but she forced herself to continue reading. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to. What I said to you that day in the conference room was inexcusable. I let my past with Victoria poison my ability to trust, and I said things that were cruel and untrue. The letter went on for pages. James wrote about the months after Elena left, how he had hired private investigators to verify her story, how he had learned about her grandmother, her struggles, her character, how he had discovered that everything she had ever told him was true. I tried to find you, the letter continued, but you had disappeared completely, and I began to realize that maybe that was for the best. I had hurt you too deeply for forgiveness. But, Elena, I want you to know that I never stopped thinking about you, and I never stopped regretting the choices I made that day. Elena wiped her eyes and looked up at Mr. Davidson, who was waiting patiently. There's more, he said gently. Elena returned to the letter. The final pages contained James's speculation about the child Elena had claimed to be carrying, his regrets about never knowing if he had a son or daughter, his hopes that the child would grow up healthy and happy even without him. If my child exists, James had written, I hope you will tell them that their father was flawed, but that he would have loved them if he had been brave enough to believe. I have left provisions in my will to ensure that you and the child are financially secure, not because I think you need my money, but because it is the right thing to do. The final paragraph made Elena sob openly. Elena, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too broken and stupid to see it. I hope you have found happiness and peace. You deserve nothing less. With all my love and deepest regrets, James. Mr. Davidson handed her tissues and waited for her to compose herself. Ms. Martinez, I need to ask, do you have a child? James's child. Elena nodded, unable to speak. Then, I need to inform you that James left a substantial trust fund for his heir, as well as a significant bequest for you. We're talking about several $1,000,000. Elena stared at him in shock. I don't want his money. I understand this is overwhelming, but perhaps you should think about your child's future. The trust fund is set up to provide for education, healthcare, housing, everything a child might need. Over the following days, Elena struggled with the decision. She had managed on her own for 2 years, building a quiet but comfortable life for herself and Sophia. Taking James's money felt like accepting charity, like admitting she couldn't provide for her daughter alone. But As she watched Sophia playing in their tiny backyard, Elena began to think differently. This wasn't charity. This was a father providing for his child, even from beyond the grave. Sophia deserved every advantage Elena could give her, including the financial security her father had tried to provide. Elena called Mr. Davidson and agreed to meet with him again. The legal paperwork was overwhelming: trusts and investments and legal guardianships. But one document caught her attention. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to a deed. "James's house. He left it to you as well." Elena's breath caught. James's house was a mansion in Seattle's most exclusive neighborhood, worth millions of dollars. "I can't accept that. Ms. Martinez, with respect, James was very specific about his wishes. He wanted to ensure that you and his child were provided for. The house comes with a full-time staff and maintenance fund. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." Elena thought about her cramped cottage, about Sophia's tiny bedroom, about the uncertainty of freelance work. Then, she thought about James, alone in that big house, regretting choices he could never unmake. "Can I see it first? The house, I mean." A week later, Elena and Sophia flew to Seattle. Elena had been dreading returning to the city where everything had gone wrong. But, as their plane descended through the clouds, she felt a strange sense of coming home. The house was even more impressive than Elena remembered from the few photos she had seen in magazines. Set on 3 acres overlooking Puget Sound, it was elegant without being ostentatious, clearly designed for a family even though James had lived there alone. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, greeted them at the door with a warm smile and tears in her eyes. "You must be Elena," she said. "Mr. Sterling talked about you often, especially these past 2 years." "He did." "Oh yes, dear. He never stopped hoping you would come back someday." Sophia was enchanted by the house, running through rooms that were bigger than their entire cottage, marveling at the spiral staircase and the enormous windows overlooking the water. "Mama, is this our house now?" she asked, pressing her nose against the glass in what had been James's study. "I don't know, sweetheart. What do you think? It's very big. Do we get to keep Mrs. Patterson? She makes good cookies." That evening, after Sophia had fallen asleep in one of the guest bedrooms, Elena walked through the house alone. In James's study, she found something that made her sink into his leather chair and cry all over again. On his desk was a framed photo of her, one she had never seen before. It must have been taken during one of their working dinners, when she was laughing at something he had said. She looked happy, radiant even. On the photo, James had written in small letters, "The one who got away." Beside the photo was a folder labeled Elena. Inside, Elena found copies of all her work from other clients, articles about her business, even a clipping from the local Mendocino newspaper announcing the birth of baby Sophia Martinez 2 years earlier. James had been keeping track of her all along. He had known about Sophia, known she was his daughter, and yet he had stayed away. Why? Elena found her answer in another letter hidden in the folder, this one unsealed and apparently never sent. "My dearest Elena," it read, "I know about our daughter. I've known for months. She's beautiful, just like her mother. I watch from a distance sometimes, hoping to catch a glimpse of you both, but I never approach because I have no right to disrupt the life you've built. I made my choice that day in the conference room, and the consequences are mine to bear. But please know that I love you both, more than I have words to express." The letter was dated just 2 weeks before James's death. Elena clutched the letter to her chest, overwhelmed by grief for what might have been. James had loved them. He had wanted to be part of their lives, but had believed his previous cruelty had cost him that right. The next morning brought another revelation. Mrs. Patterson showed Elena to James's bedroom, where she found the master suite had been converted into something unexpected. Half the large space had been set up as a nursery. A beautiful crib sat beside the king-sized bed, surrounded by toys and children's books. The walls were painted a soft yellow, decorated with hand-painted murals of fairy tale scenes. "He started working on this room about 6 months ago," Mrs. Patterson explained quietly. "He said he wanted to be ready, just in case you ever came home." Elena sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the nursery that would never be used by its intended occupant. James had been preparing for a future with his daughter, hoping against hope that Elena might forgive him someday. That afternoon, Elena made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She called Mr. Davidson from James's study, surrounded by evidence of his love and regret. "I'll keep the house," she said. "Sophia should grow up knowing that her father wanted her, even if he never got the chance to show her." "I think that's very wise, Ms. Martinez. There's something else. I want to establish a foundation in James's name. Something for single mothers, to help them get the support they need." "That's a beautiful idea. And Mr. Davidson, I want you to arrange for fresh flowers to be placed on James's grave every week. Sunflowers, if possible. They were my grandmother's favorites." Moving to Seattle was both easier and harder than Elena had expected. Mrs. Patterson and the rest of the household staff welcomed them warmly, clearly delighted to have life and laughter fill the house again. Sophia adapted quickly, making friends with the gardener's granddaughter and declaring the swimming pool to be the best thing ever. But Elena struggled with the constant reminders of James. His clothes still hung in the closet, his coffee mug sat by the kitchen sink, his favorite books lay open on nightstands throughout the house. Mrs. Patterson gently suggested they might want to pack some things away, but Elena found herself reluctant to erase the traces of James's presence entirely. One evening, 3 months after they had moved in, Elena was reading to Sophia in the nursery when her daughter asked the question Elena had been dreading. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy?" Elena's heart ached as she looked down at Sophia's serious blue eyes, James's eyes. "You do have a daddy, sweetheart. He's just not here with us anymore." "Did he go away because he didn't like me?" "Oh no, baby. No, never think that." Elena pulled Sophia closer. "Your daddy loved you very much, even though he never got to meet you. He had to go to heaven before you were born, but he's watching over us now." Sophia considered this solemnly. "Is that why we live in his house? Because he's watching us?" "Yes, I think so." "Do you think he likes my drawings?" Elena smiled through her tears. Sophia had been creating artwork prolifically since they moved to the house, as if inspired by the beauty around her. "I think he loves your drawings." That night, after Sophia was asleep, Elena sat in James's study and wrote him a letter she would never send. 5 years had passed since Elena and Sophia had made James's house their home, and the grand estate had transformed from a monument to loneliness into a place filled with warmth and laughter. Sophia, now 7 years old, had grown into a confident, intelligent child who moved through the world with the assurance of someone who had never doubted her place in it. Elena stood at the kitchen window, watching Sophia play in the garden with her best friend, Marcus Patterson, the grandson of their beloved housekeeper. The two children were building an elaborate fort out of garden chairs and old sheets, their voices carrying across the manicured lawn as they planned their imaginary adventures. "Miss Elena?" Mrs. Patterson appeared at Elena's elbow, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "The foundation office called. They need you to review the budget proposals for next quarter." Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. The James Sterling Foundation for Single Mothers had grown beyond her wildest expectations, helping hundreds of women get back on their feet through education grants, childcare assistance, and business loans. Elena split her time between running the foundation and her own design business, which had flourished once she returned to Seattle. "I'll look at them this afternoon. Is Dr. Morgan still coming for dinner tonight?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes twinkled. "Yes, and he's bringing flowers again. That makes 6 weeks in a row." Elena felt her cheeks warm. Dr. David Morgan was Sophia's pediatrician, a kind, gentle man who had become part of their lives gradually over the past year. What had started as professional consultations had evolved into friendship, and, lately, something that might become more. "He's just being polite." Mrs. Patterson said diplomatically. "Well, whatever he's being, Sophia adores him." That was true. Sophia had taken to David immediately, probably because he treated her like an intelligent person rather than just a child. He answered her endless questions about science and medicine with infinite patience, and she had started talking about becoming a doctor herself when she grew up. The doorbell rang, interrupting Elena's thoughts. Mrs. Patterson went to answer it, returning a few minutes later with a puzzled expression. "Ms. Elena, there's a woman here to see you. Victoria Sterling. She says she was James's ex-wife." Elena's coffee cup nearly slipped from her hands. Victoria Sterling was the last person she had expected to see, ever. What could James's ex-wife possibly want after all these years? "Should I tell her you're not available?" Mrs. Patterson asked, clearly protective. No, it's fine. Show her to the living room. I'll be there in a minute. Elena took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. She had seen Victoria's picture in society magazines over the years, but they had never met face to face. Elena had no idea what to expect from this encounter. Victoria Sterling was exactly what Elena had imagined: tall, blonde, and expensively dressed in a way that suggested money had never been a concern. But as Elena entered the living room, she was surprised to see that Victoria looked nervous, almost vulnerable. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for seeing me. I know this must be unexpected. Please, call me Elena. Can I offer you something to drink?" "No, thank you." Victoria perched on the edge of the sofa, as if ready to flee at any moment. "I'll get straight to the point. I'm here because I recently learned some things about James that I never knew when we were married." Elena settled into James's favorite armchair, trying to appear calmer than she felt. "Oh, my lawyer mentioned that James had left everything to you and your daughter. I was curious, so I did some research." Victoria's voice was quiet, almost ashamed. "I found out about the foundation, about the work you're doing. I read James's letters to the board, explaining why he wanted to help single mothers." Elena waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Elena, James wrote that he had been wrong about you, that he had accused you of terrible things when you told him about the baby. He wrote that he spent the last years of his life regretting his mistakes. Why are you telling me this?" Victoria looked down at her hands, expensive rings glittering in the afternoon light. "Because I think I might be the reason he reacted that way." Elena frowned. "I don't understand. During our divorce, Victoria paused, gathering courage. "I lied about being pregnant. I thought it would make James more willing to negotiate, to give me a larger settlement. When he found out the truth, he was devastated. Not because of the money, but because he had wanted that baby so much." The room fell silent except for the distant sound of children playing in the garden. "He wanted children," Victoria continued, "more than anything. But I kept putting him off, making excuses. I thought we had plenty of time, and honestly, I was more interested in my social life than starting a family." Elena felt a stab of sympathy for this woman who seemed so different from the shallow socialite she had imagined. "By the time I realized how much damage I had done, it was too late. James filed for divorce, and he never trusted me again. I think that's why he reacted so badly when you told him about your baby. He had been burned before." "Victoria, why are you here? What do you want from me?" "I want to apologize. Not just to you, but to your daughter." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "James should have had the chance to know his child. My lies cost him that opportunity, and I'm sorrier than I can express." Before Elena could respond, the patio doors burst open and Sophia came running in, her hair wild from playing outside, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mama, Marcus and I found a bird's nest in the oak tree. Can we watch it to see when the babies hatch?" Sophia stopped short when she noticed Victoria, suddenly, shy in the presence of a stranger. "Sophia, this is Mrs. Sterling. She was a friend of your father's." Sophia studied Victoria with the frank curiosity of childhood. "You knew my daddy?" Victoria's breath caught audibly. "Yes, sweetheart. I knew him very well. Mama says he was a good man, but he had to go to heaven before I was born. Do you think he would have liked me?" Victoria covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling over. "Oh, darling. He would have loved you more than anything in the whole world." Sophia beamed at this assessment. "Mama, can Mrs. Sterling stay for dinner? Dr. David is coming, and Mrs. Patterson made roast chicken." Elena looked at Victoria, who was wiping her eyes with a tissue. "Would you like to stay? I think Sophia would enjoy hearing stories about her father. I would be honored." Dinner that evening was unlike anything Elena could have imagined when she woke up that morning. Dr. David Morgan had arrived bearing flowers for Elena and a new science book for Sophia, and he had taken Victoria's presence in stride with the easy grace that Elena had come to love about him. Victoria, once she relaxed, proved to be an engaging storyteller. She regaled Sophia with tales of James's younger days, his determination to build his business, his love of sailing and old movies. "Your father was the most ethical person I've ever known," Victoria told Sophia over dessert. "He believed in doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. He would be so proud of the foundation your mother built in his name. Will you come visit us again?" Sophia asked as Victoria prepared to leave. If your mother doesn't mind, I would like that very much. After Victoria left, Elena tucked Sophia into bed while David waited downstairs. Sophia was full of questions about her father and this new person who had known him. I like Mrs. Sterling, Sophia announced as Elena pulled her covers up. She made Daddy sound real, not just like a picture on the wall. Elena's heart squeezed. She had tried to keep James's memory alive for Sophia, but it was different hearing about him from someone who had actually known him. Did you like having Dr. David here too? Elena asked. Sophia nodded sleepily. He's nice. Do you think he'll ever want to be my daddy? Elena was startled by the direct question. Would you like that? Maybe. I like him, and he makes you smile a lot. Downstairs, David was waiting in the living room, looking at family photos on the mantelpiece. Elena found him studying a picture of her and Sophia from the previous Christmas. She's a remarkable child, he said, turning as Elena entered the room. She is. David, about what she said earlier. Elena, we don't have to talk about this now if you're not ready. Actually, I think I am ready. Elena sat down beside him on the sofa. These past few months with you have been wonderful. You've become such an important part of our lives. David took her hand gently. You and Sophia are the best things that have ever happened to me. I know the situation is complicated, with James's memory and everything he means to both of you. I don't want to replace him or compete with him. You're not competing with him. James will always be Sophia's biological father, and I'll always make sure she knows how much he loved her. But Sophia deserves to have a father figure in her life, someone who's actually here to help her grow up. David squeezed her hand. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I love you, David Morgan, and I think we could build something beautiful together, the three of us. David's answer was a kiss that tasted like promise and new beginnings. 6 months later, Elena stood in the garden where she and David had exchanged vows in a simple ceremony surrounded by their closest friends and family. Sophia had been their flower girl, beaming with pride as she scattered rose petals down the makeshift aisle. Victoria had become an unexpected but welcome presence in their lives, visiting regularly and developing a genuine bond with Sophia. She had also become a major benefactor of the foundation, using her social connections to raise funds and awareness. She's like a fairy godmother, Sophia had declared after Victoria's latest visit, during which she had brought Sophia an elaborate dollhouse and pledged a substantial donation to help fund a new childcare center. Elena had been initially wary of Victoria's involvement, but she had come to understand that helping Sophia was Victoria's way of making amends for the choices that had cost James his chance at fatherhood. Now, as Elena watched David teaching Sophia how to sail on the small boat they kept at the marina, she felt a deep sense of peace. James's house had become a true family home, filled with love and laughter and the promise of future generations. Mrs. Patterson, now well into her 70s but refusing to retire, still ruled the kitchen with benevolent authority. She had been delighted when Elena and David married, claiming she had been playing matchmaker all along. That man was smitten from the first time he saw you, she had confided to Elena. And Sophia had him wrapped around her finger before he'd been here an hour. The foundation continued to grow and thrive, helping hundreds of women build better lives for themselves and their children. Elena often thought about how James would have felt knowing that his legacy was helping to break cycles of poverty and desperation. One afternoon, while working in the foundation office, Elena received a call that would change everything once again. Ms. Martinez? This is Detective Sarah Chun with Seattle PD. I have some information about the accident that killed James Sterling. Elena's heart began to race. James had been dead for over 6 years. What new information could there possibly be? What kind of information? We've just arrested the driver who killed Mr. Sterling. He was drunk at the time of the accident, and he fled the scene. We've been looking for him ever since. Elena sank into her chair. You caught him? Yes, ma'am. He was arrested on another drunk driving charge, and his DNA matched evidence from the scene. There's going to be a trial, and we may need you to provide victim impact statements. That evening, Elena struggled with how to tell Sophia about this development. Her daughter was now 8 years old enough to understand more about what had happened to her biological father. Sophia, you know how I've always told you that Daddy James died in a car accident? Sophia nodded solemnly. She and Elena often visited James's grave together, bringing flowers and telling him about Sophia's accomplishments in school and her latest adventures. Well, the police found the person who caused the accident. There's going to be a trial to decide what happens to him. Was he a bad man? Elena considered how to explain drunk driving to a child. He made a very bad choice. He had been drinking alcohol, which made it dangerous for him to drive. When people drink alcohol, it makes it hard for them to think clearly and react quickly. Is he going to jail? Probably. The judge will decide. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then, she asked, "Does this mean Daddy David isn't my real dad anymore?" Elena pulled Sophia into her arms. "Oh, sweetheart. David is absolutely your real dad. Being a father isn't just about biology. It's about being there every day, helping you with homework, cheering you on at soccer games, reading bedtime stories. David does all those things because he loves you. And Daddy James is still my angel daddy? Yes, baby. You're lucky enough to have had two fathers who love you very much." The trial was difficult for Elena, forcing her to relive the pain of losing James just as she was learning to build a new life. But it also brought a sense of closure she hadn't expected. The man who killed James, Robert Hendricks, was sentenced to 15 years in prison for vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident. More importantly, the trial gave Elena a platform to speak about James's life and legacy, about the man he had been and the good that had come from his memory. She established a scholarship in his name for children who had lost parents to drunk drivers, and she lobbied for stronger penalties for repeat drunk driving offenders. James Sterling was more than just a victim, Elena told the packed courtroom during her impact statement. He was a father who never got to meet his daughter, a man who spent his last years trying to make amends for past mistakes, a person whose legacy of helping others continues to grow every day. Afterward, Robert Hendrick's own daughter approached Elena in the courthouse hallway. She was about Elena's age, with tired eyes and the worn appearance of someone who had been dealing with addiction in her family for years. "Ms. Martinez, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. My father has been an alcoholic for as long as I can remember. I tried to get him help, but..." She trailed off, tears in her eyes. Elena surprised herself by reaching out to comfort the woman. "What's your name?" "Jennifer. Jennifer Hendricks." "Jennifer, you're not responsible for your father's choices. But maybe some good can come from this tragedy. Would you be interested in working with the foundation? We help families affected by addiction too." 6 months later, Jennifer Hendricks had become one of the foundation's most dedicated volunteers, sharing her story with families struggling with addiction and helping to prevent other tragedies like the one that took James's life. On Sophia's 9th birthday, Elena organized a special celebration that honored all the people who had shaped their lives. David was there, of course, having officially adopted Sophia the year before. Victoria came with an extravagant gift and stories about James's childhood birthdays. Mrs. Patterson baked Sophia's favorite chocolate cake, and even Jennifer Hendricks joined them, having become like family over the months of working together. But the most special moment came when Sophia made a wish and blew out her candles. "What did you wish for?" Elena asked. "I wish that Daddy James could see how happy we all are," Sophia said simply. "And I wish that other kids whose daddies are in heaven could have families like ours." Elena looked around at the people gathered in their home, the home that James had provided, that love had transformed, that hope had filled with new possibilities. Victoria was laughing at something David had said. Mrs. Patterson was already clearing dishes despite Elena's protests that she should sit and enjoy the party. Jennifer was helping Marcus cut an extra piece of cake. This wasn't the family Elena had originally imagined when she was young and full of dreams. It was something messier, more complicated, built from loss and forgiveness, and the remarkable human capacity to create love from the most unlikely circumstances. James Sterling had accused Elena of being a gold digger, not knowing she was carrying his only heir. He had died believing he had lost his chance at happiness, not knowing that his love would create something more precious than any treasure. Elena touched the locket David had given her for their anniversary, which held pictures of both James and David, the past and the future, the love that was lost and the love that was found. Inside, she had inscribed the words that had become their family motto: "Love multiplies." Sophia was right. James could see how happy they all were. Elena felt it in every corner of the house he had left them, in every life the foundation touched, in every moment of joy that grew from the seeds of sorrow he had unknowingly planted. Some stories don't end with the lovers reuniting. Sometimes they end with love itself transcending individual lives and individual losses, becoming something larger and more enduring than any single relationship. James Sterling's greatest legacy wasn't his business empire or his wealth. It was the family that bloomed from his ashes, the love that multiplied instead of diminished, the proof that even broken hearts can nurture seeds that grow into something beautiful and lasting. As Elena watched Sophia run through the garden with her friends, chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk, she whispered a prayer of gratitude to the man who had given them all this abundance, who had loved them enough to provide for a future he would never see. The gold digger accusation had been wrong in every possible way. Elena hadn't been digging for gold. She had been planting gardens. And now, years later, she was harvesting joy. "Dear James," she began, "we're living in your house now, Sophia and I. She's remarkable, smart and funny and kind. She has your eyes and your stubborn streak, though she gets that from me too. I wish you could see her. I wish things had been different between us. I forgive you for what happened that day. I understand now that you were protecting yourself from being hurt again. I just wish you had trusted me enough to let me prove you wrong while you were still alive. Sophia will know about you, I promise. She'll know that her father was a good man who made a mistake, but who loved her from the moment he knew she existed." Elena sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in the photo frame next to James's picture of her. It felt like a small ceremony, a way of putting the past to rest so they could all move forward together. Outside the study windows, Seattle sparkled in the darkness, full of possibilities Elena was only beginning to imagine. She and Sophia were home now, in the house that love had built, surrounded by the legacy of a man who had learned too late that some gambles were worth taking, some risks were worth the potential reward. James Sterling was gone, but his love remained, woven into every corner of the house, every provision he had made for their future, every hope he had harbored for a family he would never see. It wasn't the ending any of them would have chosen, but it was a beginning nonetheless, a chance for Sophia to grow up knowing she was wanted, knowing she belonged, knowing that sometimes love finds a way to endure even when the lovers themselves cannot. Her still flat stomach, Elena made a promise to her unborn child. This baby would never know the kind of rejection she had just experienced. This baby would grow up knowing they were loved and wanted, even if their father couldn't see past his own prejudices and past hurts. James Sterling had accused her of being a gold digger, not knowing that he was carrying his only heir. But Elena was determined to prove that some things in life were more valuable than gold, more precious than money. Love, family, integrity. These were the treasures she would give her child. And if James Sterling was too blind to see what he was throwing away, that was his loss, not theirs. Elena picked up the pieces of the torn check and threw them away one more time, this time with finality. She was done with James Sterling and his money. From now on, she and her baby would make their own way in the world. She had no way of knowing that across the city, James was standing in his empty office, staring at his phone and wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The hurt in Elena's eyes when he had accused her haunted him, but his ex-wife's betrayal had left scars that ran deep. Trust didn't come easily anymore, especially when it came to unexpected pregnancies and women who might have reasons to lie. But as the days passed and Elena didn't cash the check or call the lawyers, James began to wonder if he had been wrong. If maybe, just maybe, Elena Martinez was exactly who she appeared to be, an honest woman trying to make her way in the world, who had found herself in an impossible situation through no fault of her own. By then, however, it was too late. Elena had disappeared from his life as completely as if she had never existed, leaving only memories of shared meals and late-night conversations, and the haunting possibility that he had thrown away something precious because he was too afraid to believe in it.